Tokyo, 1922. The city was alive with neon lights, bustling streets, and the hum of modernization. But beneath its vibrant surface, a dark story unfolded that would haunt the memory of all who heard it. Two lovers, bound by obsession and mutual passion, embarked on a lethal journey that would leave death in their wake. Their relationship was intense, secretive, and dangerously intoxicating. Friends described them as charming and magnetic, yet whispers circulated of their dark inclinations. The first incident occurred quietly, almost unnoticed. An unsuspecting merchant received a gift from the couple, a token of affection masked in elegance. Unbeknownst to him, it carried a deadly poison. Within hours he was dead, and no immediate suspicion fell upon the lovers. This was only the beginning. The pair's meticulous planning and intelligence allowed them to orchestrate murders that seemed almost impossible. Every act was deliberate, every detail considered, every witness avoided. They moved through the city like shadows, invisible yet influential. Patrons, acquaintances, and even police struggled to connect the series of deaths, failing to detect the common thread that linked each tragedy. The lovers' bond intensified with each act of destruction. Their intimacy and shared secrets became a dangerous catalyst, intertwining love with lethal precision. Letters, gifts, and social appearances concealed the darkness within, giving them an air of respectability and charm. Yet, those who encountered them closely felt a subtle tension, a sense that something was deeply wrong. Each murder seemed almost artistic, executed with precision, leaving behind only mystery and fear. Rumors began to circulate across Tokyo. Stories of a poisoned couple who left devastation wherever they went spread in hushed tones. People speculated whether their actions were fueled solely by passion, or whether there was a deeper, darker purpose behind each killing. The city became a stage for their deadly romance, a setting in which fear and fascination coexisted. Their targets were varied, from merchants and officials to casual acquaintances, yet the outcomes were consistently fatal. No pattern was easily discernible, making investigation exceedingly difficult. The lovers' methods involved careful observation, precise timing, and subtle manipulation. Poisoning was not always immediate. Sometimes it caused prolonged suffering, psychological torment, and terror before death. Observers who studied the aftermath noted that the emotional impact often exceeded the physical. Families of the victims were devastated, and the social atmosphere in Tokyo shifted under the weight of dread. Scholars and police alike were puzzled. Investigators traced the incidents, but evidence remained scarce, and the couple's trail seemed to vanish into thin air. Each killing reinforced their mystique, feeding both fear and fascination. The lovers' relationship itself was an enigma. Accounts suggest that their obsession with each other was inseparable from their compulsion to kill. Their love was as dangerous as it was passionate, and each act of murder seemed to cement their bond. Psychology, obsession, and calculation blended seamlessly, creating a pattern that defied logic. Even amidst chaos and suspicion, their social personas remained flawless. To outsiders, they appeared as sophisticated, elegant, and refined, hiding the lethal precision behind a veneer of charm. Letters sent to acquaintances often carried coded warnings or subtle hints, an intellectual game intertwined with deadly consequences. Their manipulation extended beyond direct victims. The entire city became subtly influenced by their presence. Fear infiltrated everyday life, making simple interactions tense and filled with uncertainty. People wondered who might be the next target, and even casual encounters held a shadow of dread. The lovers' cunning allowed them to operate undetected for months, perhaps years. Each calculated decision minimized risk and maximized the impact of their actions. Psychological warfare was as essential to their plan as the poison itself. Witnesses described feelings of unease, confusion, and inexplicable anxiety after brief encounters. Those who later discovered the connection to the deaths realized the subtle genius behind the lovers' strategy. Their ability to manipulate both people and perception was extraordinary. By the time authorities began piecing together the events, the couple had already established an almost legendary reputation. Newspapers hesitated to publish details, yet rumors spread faster than official reports. Citizens spoke in whispers, fascinated yet horrified by the accounts. The lovers' trail of death was not random. Each act carried symbolic meaning, personal vendettas, or psychological significance. Observers noted that the victims often shared subtle connections, yet the broader implications remained obscured. Scholars later analyzed the case, noting the combination of love, obsession, and methodical killing as unique. Historical records emphasized both the horror and ingenuity, portraying the couple as unparalleled in their lethal ingenuity. The city itself became a witness to a romance twisted into murder, a narrative where passion and death were inseparable. Families of victims recounted the terror in detail, the sudden illness, the whispers of warning, and the invisible hand guiding events toward fatal outcomes. Even those not directly involved reported a pervasive atmosphere of fear. Social life, commerce, and even simple gatherings became tinged with anxiety, as no one knew who might be next. The lovers' story spread beyond Tokyo, reaching distant cities carried by travelers' letters and whispers. Their names became synonymous with a dangerous romance, blending love with lethal skill. Analysts speculated endlessly about motive, psychology, and method. Was it simple obsession, intellectual thrill, or something darker, more calculating? The precision of their poisonings, combined with social charm and manipulation, suggested a blend of genius and malevolence rarely seen. Despite repeated attempts to capture or expose them, the lovers remained elusive. Their disappearance, if they ever truly left the city, only added to the legend. Fear persisted, haunting citizens long after the last recorded incident. Tokyo, 1922, became defined by this duality. Modernity and progress on the surface, shadowed by hidden danger and obsessive passion beneath. The lovers' actions had permanently altered the psychological and cultural landscape. Even decades later, scholars, writers, and storytellers reference the poisoned lovers as a cautionary tale, illustrating the deadly intersection of love, obsession, and intelligence. The story begins not with discovery, but with the first fatal act, a seemingly innocent gift-turned instrument of death, and continues as a meticulously orchestrated series of murders. Each death, each manipulation, and each subtle act of influence reinforce the bond between the lovers, proving that passion and destruction can exist simultaneously. Social interactions, family life, and even commerce in Tokyo became subtly influenced by fear and anticipation. Citizens adjusted behavior, avoided certain areas, and spoke carefully, reflecting the unseen power of the lovers' presence. Historians analyzing the case later emphasized the psychological sophistication involved. Each poisoning, each carefully crafted letter, and every public appearance was part of a broader strategy to maintain control, avoid suspicion, and maximize both terror and fascination. The narrative demonstrates the inseparability of love and danger, obsession and calculation. The poisoned lover's story remains a chilling example of how human emotions, when combined with intellect and malevolence, can leave an indelible mark on society. Their legend, carried in whispers, records, and later retellings, ensures that Tokyo's streets remember the deadly romance, the trail of death, and the psychological mastery that made the lovers' actions both terrifying and unforgettable. This is where the tale begins, a story of passion and poison, obsession and calculation, leaving behind a legacy that will haunt the memory of anyone who learns it. The lovers were not ordinary citizens of Tokyo. They came from families with wealth, education, and influence, which allowed them to move freely through society without raising suspicion. Their upbringing was marked by privilege, but also by peculiarities that hinted at the darkness to come. From an early age, both displayed intelligence and ambition far beyond their peers. They shared a fascination with poisons, psychology, and human behavior, often experimenting in secrecy. Tokyo in 1922 was a city in transition, balancing tradition with modernity. Yet the couple exploited the gaps in societal oversight with remarkable skill. They attended elite gatherings, mingling with merchants, officials, and intellectuals, all the while meticulously studying human reactions and vulnerabilities. Their courtship was unusual, blending intense affection with an almost ritualistic approach to planning. Love for them was inseparable from power, control, and experimentation. Each meeting, each gift, and each conversation served as both a demonstration of devotion and a rehearsal for more sinister actions. Their first victims were chosen carefully, often individuals who would arouse minimal suspicion if they suddenly disappeared or died. Small indicators, a gift, a meal, a conversation, were always deployed strategically. The couple's knowledge of poisons was extensive. They sourced rare chemicals and compounds, tested them discreetly, and learned how to manipulate dosage, timing, and method to ensure maximum effect. Their approach combined scientific observation with psychological manipulation, making their crimes nearly undetectable in the early stages. Their home, a modest but elegant apartment, served as both residence and laboratory. Shelves lined with books on chemistry, human behavior, and historical murders revealed their interests and research. Every detail in their environment was calculated to maintain secrecy and control. Servants and acquaintances noticed little, as the couple maintained appearances of ordinary, even sophisticated behavior. The lovers' relationship dynamic was key to their success. They complemented each other perfectly. One was meticulous, patient, and strategic. The other charismatic, persuasive, and socially adept. Together, they formed a unit capable of both charm and lethal precision. Over months, their actions escalated, each murder more intricate than the last. Observers would later note a pattern, but at the time, no one suspected the same hands were responsible. Poisonings were often subtle, with symptoms mimicking natural illness or accident, further obscuring the truth. Letters and social interactions served dual purposes, maintaining their cover while subtly testing human reactions. Friends and acquaintances unknowingly became part of psychological experiments. The couple's obsession with control extended beyond their immediate victims. They studied the city, its authorities, and the social hierarchy, ensuring their actions would minimize risk while maximizing effect. Their movements were deliberate and calculated, demonstrating a combination of intelligence and audacity rarely seen. Even the timing of meals, meetings, and public appearances was designed to avoid detection, while reinforcing their personal bond. Observers would later describe the couple as enigmatic, almost ethereal in their grace, which concealed the deadly precision beneath. Scholars analyzing the case years later emphasized the psychological sophistication involved. Understanding fear, manipulation, and perception allowed the lovers to operate in plain sight. Each victim was selected not only for convenience, but also for psychological impact. Families, friends, and co-workers were affected in ways that extended beyond the immediate death. Rumors, whispers, and social tension created a broader atmosphere of fear. The lovers understood this, and in many cases cultivated these conditions intentionally. Early killings were experimental, testing both human reaction and the efficacy of their methods. As confidence grew, so did ambition. They expanded their targets, choosing individuals whose deaths would send wider ripples through Tokyo society. These actions revealed a disturbing combination of passion, intellect, and obsession. Both members of the couple maintained personal journals, documenting results, observations, and reflections on human behavior. These records, discovered later, provided a chilling insight into the meticulous planning behind every act. Their understanding of chemistry and poison was far from superficial. They studied reaction times, dosages, and symptoms extensively, turning each act into a scientific observation as much as a personal expression of devotion. Socially, the couple blended effortlessly, attending events, hosting gatherings, and participating in cultural life, all while secretly orchestrating death. Their duality, public elegance and private malevolence, became a defining feature of their legend. Tokyo's residents remained largely unaware of the growing danger, yet subtle signs began to emerge. Unexplained illnesses, sudden deaths, and whispers of a deadly duo circulating through elite circles. Authorities were perplexed, as individual incidents appeared unrelated. The couple's intelligence and foresight allowed them to manipulate every scenario, leaving minimal evidence. Even when suspicion arose, they skillfully redirected attention, maintaining both charm and credibility. Observers would later note that the lovers' obsession with each other fueled their actions. The more intimate their bond, the bolder their murders became. Psychological dependency intertwined with passion, producing a feedback loop where love and lethality reinforced one another. Their understanding of human behavior, both in victims and witnesses, allowed them to predict reactions and outcomes with terrifying accuracy. This mastery extended beyond the immediate act, influencing social networks, families, and the broader community. Their experimentation with poisons, subtle manipulations, and psychological influence created a web of fear and fascination. Even casual interactions were part of their strategy, allowing them to observe reactions, test assumptions, and refine methods. Tokyo, in the early 1920s, provided an environment conducive to such a phenomenon, a city where social norms, modernization, and anonymity intersected. The couple exploited this environment fully, creating a space where lethal romance could thrive in secret. Their story, once fully uncovered, would become a textbook case of obsessive love combined with methodical violence. The precision, foresight, and audacity of their actions would astound future scholars. Every detail, from the selection of victims to the subtle manipulation of social interactions, revealed an extraordinary understanding of human psychology. Even minor errors were anticipated and corrected, demonstrating an almost obsessive perfectionism. The couple's dynamic, combining affection, strategy, and lethal intent, set them apart from any ordinary criminals. The city's unsuspecting residents became part of an intricate experiment in fear, influence, and the intersection of passion and death. The lovers' careful cultivation of social perception allowed them to remain undetected, while leaving a trail of influence and terror. Even after individual murders, the consequences spread further, affecting families, friends, and entire neighborhoods. Patterns emerged only retrospectively, reinforcing the complexity and sophistication of their methods. This background provides essential context. Understanding the lover's upbringing, environment, relationship, and meticulous planning is key to comprehending the full extent of their trail of death. Every action, interaction, and observation contributed to a strategy that was as psychological as it was lethal. The combination of intellect, charm, and obsession made them uniquely dangerous. Their story is not simply one of crime. It is a study in the fusion of love, passion, and calculated destruction, leaving a legacy that would haunt Tokyo for years to come. As the lovers' reputation grew in secret, their methods became more audacious, yet they remained invisible to authorities. Tokyo's social elite often crossed paths with the couple, admiring their elegance, unaware of the deadly intentions that lurked beneath polished smiles. Each event, dinner, or gathering became an opportunity for observation, manipulation, and subtle testing of human behavior. The lovers analyzed reactions to conversations, gestures, and even minor inconveniences, using every detail to refine their strategy. Victims were chosen with careful consideration, some for proximity, others for social influence, and occasionally for the thrill of experimenting with different psychological reactions. Their knowledge of poisons continued to advance, incorporating rare substances and combining chemicals to create subtle, nearly undetectable effects. Symptoms were designed to mimic natural illness, accidents, or stress-induced collapses, ensuring that the true cause remained hidden. Those who interacted with the couple noticed an inexplicable aura of control and charisma, a magnetic presence that commanded attention while concealing lethal intent. Family members, friends, and casual acquaintances all became unwitting participants in a psychological web, their responses carefully monitored and cataloged. The couple maintained a meticulous record of each interaction, writing notes, letters, and observations that detailed every nuance of behavior, timing, and outcome. Over time, their experiments became increasingly sophisticated, blending science, art, and human manipulation. Each act of poison or subtle sabotage was a calculated study, testing both the victim and the surrounding social environment. Even when no death occurred, the psychological impact was profound. Anxiety, fear, and suspicion spread through social circles, enhancing the lovers' influence. The psychological warfare extended beyond immediate victims, affecting entire neighborhoods and communities. People altered routines, avoided interactions, and questioned their surroundings, unknowingly falling under the control of the lovers' subtle influence. The couple's intimate bond strengthened through each calculated act. Their obsession with each other and the meticulous planning of their murders were intertwined. Love and lethal intent became inseparable, producing a feedback loop where each murder reinforced devotion and obsession. Observers who later studied the case noted that this dynamic created an almost ritualistic approach. Each act was rehearsed, documented, and executed with precision. The lovers' presence in public remained sophisticated and socially acceptable, concealing the deadly operations behind charm, elegance, and intelligence. Authorities were baffled. Patterns were nearly impossible to detect because each action was disguised, each victim's death attributed to coincidence, illness, or accident. The lovers' understanding of human psychology allowed them to anticipate investigative methods, leaving minimal evidence and exploiting gaps in the system. Their social maneuvering was as crucial as their chemical knowledge. By maintaining appearances, they ensured that suspicion never fell upon them. Over months, the lovers escalated their operations, targeting individuals whose deaths would carry psychological or social impact. Each act was measured not only for immediate effect, but also for the broader implications it would have on social networks. By controlling perception, they amplified fear while preserving anonymity. This strategy revealed extraordinary foresight and intelligence. Even casual encounters were opportunities for observation and influence, feeding into the larger psychological framework that guided their actions. The lovers' home remained a secretive laboratory, blending domesticity with experimentation. Shelves of books on chemistry, medicine, and human behavior, combined with meticulously labeled vials and instruments, demonstrated the scientific rigor behind each act. Visitors who entered remained unaware of the lethal operations being conducted in plain sight. Their manipulation extended to community perception. Through selective gifts, subtle advice, and calculated social appearances, the couple influenced behavior, spreading unease while maintaining an image of refinement. Letters, notes, and casual interactions served as experiments in social control, testing reactions and measuring psychological impact. Each member of the couple played a complementary role. One executed precise chemical manipulations, the other controlled social interactions and perception. Together they formed a unit capable of sophisticated orchestration, blending romance with lethal strategy. Victims were varied, including merchants, officials, and ordinary citizens. Some deaths were immediate, others unfolded slowly, producing prolonged fear and suffering before the final outcome. Observers later noted the meticulous calibration in dosage, timing, and method. Social gatherings became stages for subtle psychological games. Guests unknowingly became participants in observation experiments, their reactions cataloged, analyzed, and stored. The lovers' understanding of fear, suspicion, and curiosity allowed them to manipulate multiple individuals simultaneously, producing cascading effects across social networks. Over time, the couple's trail became legendary. Even those who did not interact directly with them felt the indirect effects. Mistrust, fear, and anticipation permeated social life. Authorities struggled to identify a pattern, as each incident appeared isolated, and the sophistication of execution left minimal clues. The lovers' obsession with each other ensured that no detail was overlooked. Coordination, timing, and mutual understanding enabled complex operations that might have been impossible for a single individual. The combination of romantic obsession and deadly intent produced a psychological and emotional synergy, intensifying both passion and lethal efficiency. Tokyo's social landscape was permanently altered. Communities, families, and neighborhoods operated under an invisible influence, dictated by the subtle control exerted by the poisoned lovers. Scholars and historians analyzing records later emphasized the extraordinary combination of intelligence, psychological manipulation, and lethal skill exhibited by the couple. Their operations were not random. Each death, each interaction, each observation served a purpose in a broader plan that was as elegant as it was terrifying. The legacy of the lovers extends beyond the immediate series of deaths. Their influence, psychological control, and meticulous planning demonstrate how love, obsession, and intelligence can combine to produce a uniquely lethal phenomenon. The poisoned lovers remain a haunting case study, illustrating the fusion of passion, methodical planning, and psychological manipulation. Their story, embedded in Tokyo's history, is a testament to the extraordinary danger posed by the union of genius and obsession, leaving an indelible mark on both the social and psychological fabric of the city. As the lovers' deadly game continued, Tokyo became a silent witness to their escalating influence. Each encounter, gift, and poisoned meal was meticulously planned to maximize impact while minimizing suspicion. Whispers of unexplained illnesses and sudden deaths began to circulate in the city's elite circles, creating an atmosphere of unease that spread like wildfire. Yet the couple remained untouchable, their elegance and charm serving as a perfect disguise for the horror beneath. They studied their victims carefully, selecting individuals whose deaths would have ripple effects, not only personally, but socially and economically. The lovers' obsession with precision was evident in every act. Timing, dosage, and execution were calculated with almost scientific accuracy. In public, they maintained the facade of sophistication, attending events, engaging in polite conversation, and cultivating admiration. But behind closed doors, their plans unfolded with chilling efficiency. Poison was their primary instrument, a subtle weapon that allowed them to manipulate the pace, intensity, and visibility of death. Symptoms were designed to appear natural, often mimicking illness or stress, so that authorities and acquaintances would remain oblivious. Psychological manipulation was equally important. The lovers delighted in observing fear, confusion, and the unraveling of social order. Their relationship was symbiotic, each partner complementing the other perfectly. One focused on meticulous planning and chemical preparation, while the other mastered charm, social manipulation, and observation. Together, they created a network of fear and influence that extended far beyond the immediate victims. Tokyo's residents, even those unaware of the direct threat, began to sense a subtle unease in their interactions. Trust eroded and paranoia spread. Every whispered rumor or unexplained death added to the city's growing tension, amplifying the couple's invisible power. The lovers often tested reactions through indirect methods, leaving subtle hints or coded messages that were easily overlooked but psychologically impactful. These tactics created a feedback loop, where fear and fascination reinforced each other, increasing their control over the social environment. Victims often displayed bizarre behaviors before death. Anxiety, sleeplessness, and sudden illness were common. Observers later noted that the couple's ability to anticipate reactions and manipulate outcomes was nearly unparalleled. Each act of poisoning served multiple purposes, satisfying their obsession, reinforcing their bond, and exerting influence over the broader social network. The lovers' planning extended beyond immediate murder. They considered long-term consequences, social ripples, and potential witnesses. Their foresight ensured that each death reinforced both the psychological grip and the legend surrounding them. Over time, authorities began to notice patterns in deaths and illnesses, but the sophistication of execution made direct connections difficult. The lovers' understanding of human behavior allowed them to exploit social norms, expectations, and cognitive biases, effectively remaining one step ahead. Social gatherings became carefully orchestrated performances, where subtle observation and testing of reactions complemented the chemical manipulations they employed. Even those who believed themselves safe were not immune. Proximity, social standing, and minor interactions were sufficient to draw scrutiny and potentially danger. Psychological tension in the city rose steadily, and casual encounters became laden with suspicion. Yet the lovers were admired and trusted publicly, their duality reinforcing the myth of sophistication and refinement. Each murder and subtle act of manipulation increased the pair's confidence, enabling even more ambitious plans. Their obsession with one another amplified their precision, creating a symbiotic relationship where passion and deadly intent were inseparable. As the lovers' methods evolved, they experimented with timing and dosage, learning how to maximize both physical and psychological effects. Victims' families, friends, and colleagues experienced ripple effects of fear and confusion that extended far beyond immediate fatalities. The lovers' actions were nearly invisible, yet their influence permeated every layer of social interaction. Observers would later describe a city gripped by unseen tension, where normal life continued under a shadow of uncertainty. Letters, gestures, and subtle interactions served as both communication and psychological experiments, testing human response, resilience, and fear. Each act of murder was simultaneously a demonstration of skill, a reinforcement of love, and an exercise in control. The city's authorities struggled to make sense of the series of deaths, their inability to trace a common cause amplifying public fear. Each unsolved incident further enhanced the lovers' aura, making them almost mythical figures in whispered conversations. Over time, the lovers' precision and audacity reached near perfection. They orchestrated multiple incidents in succession, testing reactions, refining methods, and expanding their network of influence. Social gatherings, public appearances, and seemingly mundane events became stages for subtle manipulation and observation. Their ability to blend affection, passion, and deadly intent created a phenomenon that was as psychologically profound as it was horrifying. Even those directly involved often failed to recognize the connection until much later, by which point the psychological impact had already taken hold. Families, neighborhoods, and social circles experienced cumulative stress, anxiety, and suspicion, demonstrating the indirect power of the lovers' operations. Observers later concluded that the couple's genius lay not merely in their technical skill with poisons, but in their understanding of human behavior, fear, and perception. Each interaction, each gift, each subtle hint contributed to a growing web of influence, terror, and fascination. By the end of this period, the lovers had cemented their reputation. Invisible manipulators, charming, yet lethal, whose every action reinforced both love and fear. Tokyo had become an unwitting participant in their psychological and chemical experiments, a city caught in the web of obsession, passion, and meticulously orchestrated death. As the lovers' influence deepened, their operations grew bolder and more complex. The pair began to experiment with multiple simultaneous poisonings, coordinating events across different districts of Tokyo with meticulous precision. Each act was carefully timed, allowing them to observe reactions without leaving evidence that could implicate them. Their victims were chosen not only for proximity, but for social impact. Influential merchants, government officials, and unsuspecting citizens became part of a web of fear that extended beyond the immediate deaths. The lovers' understanding of chemistry and human physiology allowed them to tailor each poison to the specific individual, ensuring subtlety, and lethality. Symptoms often mimicked common illnesses, making diagnosis impossible until it was too late. The couple's obsession with detail was extraordinary. Every interaction, gesture, and conversation was scrutinized, cataloged, and used to refine future actions. Psychological manipulation complemented chemical expertise. Victims and witnesses alike experienced unease, anxiety, and distrust long before any death occurred. The city's social networks became part of the experiment, as fear and suspicion permeated households, workplaces, and public gatherings. The lovers maintained public appearances of elegance, sophistication, and refinement. Their social charm masked their lethal intent, allowing them to move freely and manipulate perception. Rumors began to circulate, but skepticism prevented authorities from connecting events. Those who sensed danger often dismissed it, unaware that they were already part of the couple's intricate web. Over time, the lovers' pattern of obsession and precision created a terrifying rhythm: observation, experimentation, execution, and observation again. Each act of poison reinforced both their intimate bond and their reputation for invincibility. Collaboration between the two partners was seamless. One focused on chemistry and timing, the other on social navigation and manipulation. This division of labor allowed them to operate efficiently and with minimal risk. Even minor interactions were opportunities for learning and influence, providing data on human behavior, fear, and social dynamics. Families of victims experienced ripple effects that extended far beyond individual deaths. Anxiety, suspicion, and grief spread like an unseen toxin, shaping the emotional landscape of entire communities. The lovers' actions were not impulsive. They were meticulously orchestrated to achieve maximum psychological impact alongside physical mortality. Public events became stages for observation, where subtle gestures, casual comments, and the distribution of small gifts allowed testing of responses in real time. Patterns that later appeared obvious were at the time invisible, hidden by a combination of charm, social awareness, and chemical subtlety. The lovers' obsession with one another ensured that no detail was overlooked, producing a synergy where passion and deadly precision reinforced each other. Over time, the pair expanded their reach, incorporating increasingly complex scenarios involving multiple victims and overlapping social networks. Their experimentation with timing, dosage, and social manipulation achieved levels of sophistication rarely documented in criminal history. Authorities attempted investigation, but the lovers' foresight, preparation, and social acumen prevented capture or detection. Even seasoned detectives struggled to identify a pattern, as each incident appeared isolated and perfectly executed. Psychological tension permeated the city. People altered routines, avoided certain locations, and whispered in fear of an unseen threat. The couple's ability to control perception allowed them to manipulate not only direct victims, but entire communities. Social gatherings, workplaces, and neighborhoods became unwitting laboratories for their experiments. The lovers' meticulous documentation, through notes, letters, and observations, reflected a disturbing obsession with control, data, and influence. Even absent from public view, they exerted subtle power over human behavior. Their methods blended science, art, and psychological insight. Poison and observation worked together to produce maximum impact. Tokyo became a city caught in a shadow, where love and death intertwined invisibly. The lovers' legend spread quietly. Fear, fascination, and curiosity combined to amplify their influence. People spoke of the poisoned lovers in hushed tones, unsure whether to fear or admire them. Despite escalating incidents, the couple maintained an aura of elegance, sophistication, and untouchability. Each act of murder or manipulation reinforced their bond and the mythology surrounding them. Patterns only became apparent retrospectively, as scholars, historians, and investigators pieced together the chain of events. By the time authorities could theorize about the connection, the couple had already established control over perception and response. Their obsession with one another ensured seamless collaboration and flawless execution. Social tension, fear, and uncertainty became permanent elements in Tokyo's cultural and psychological landscape. Families, neighbors, and acquaintances lived in a climate of subtle dread, their every action influenced by the invisible presence of the poisoned lovers. Letters, social interactions, and casual encounters all became part of the couple's experimental matrix, extending influence beyond immediate victims. Their methodology demonstrates mastery of human psychology, chemistry, and social strategy, producing a legacy of fear and fascination. Each act, carefully planned and executed, contributed to a growing legend that would endure for decades. The lovers' operations were not random or chaotic. Each death, reaction, and interaction was part of a broader strategy, blending passion, obsession, and lethal precision. By the end of this period, Tokyo had been irrevocably changed. Social trust eroded, paranoia grew, and the story of the poisoned lovers became a cautionary tale whispered across households and elite circles. Their psychological and chemical mastery created a city unknowingly, under the influence of an invisible, lethal romance. Even decades later, the story of the poisoned lovers remained a chilling example of obsessive love, methodical planning, and human manipulation. Their trail of death, carefully constructed and maintained, serves as a testament to the terrifying possibilities of passion, combined with intellect and malevolence. The tension that had been silently building across Tokyo reached a breaking point as the lovers escalated their operations. Their boldest act yet was meticulously planned, a convergence of social influence, chemical mastery, and psychological manipulation. The target was a wealthy merchant, known for his influence and close ties to government officials. The couple recognized that his death would create waves throughout society, amplifying both fear and the legend surrounding them. Preparations were extensive. Subtle modifications to daily routines, careful observation of social interactions, and precise timing were executed with near-perfect synchronization. The lovers coordinated every detail, ensuring that the act would appear natural, accidental, or attributable to illness. On the day of the attack, they moved with calculated precision, blending seamlessly into public spaces while maintaining total control over the environment. The poison had been prepared weeks in advance, its properties tailored to mimic natural disease progression. Symptoms would appear gradually, creating confusion, distress, and psychological tension among those surrounding the victim. As the victim fell ill, family members and acquaintances reacted with growing concern, unaware that the cause was the lover's deadly orchestration. The city, already on edge from previous incidents, became a theater of subtle fear and suspicion. Authorities investigated each incident individually, unable to connect the dots, while the lovers observed the unfolding chaos with quiet satisfaction. The couple's bond strengthened with each successful act. The meticulous planning, the anticipation of reactions, and the seamless execution reinforced both passion and deadly skill. Their understanding of human behavior allowed them to predict responses with terrifying accuracy. Even minor social interactions were manipulated to ensure the maximum psychological effect. As the victim's condition deteriorated, the lovers observed the impact on social circles. Anxiety, fear, and confusion spread rapidly, demonstrating the indirect power of their influence. Families and associates were gripped by terror, unaware that every reaction had been anticipated and manipulated in advance. The execution of this act was not a single moment, but a carefully orchestrated series of steps, each dependent on timing, observation, and subtle intervention. The couple's mastery of chemical agents was evident. Symptoms mimicked natural illness so convincingly that medical professionals were unable to determine the cause. Hospitals, families, and friends were bewildered, leaving the lovers free to continue their observation and control. Every decision reinforced the narrative of invisible power and omnipresence that surrounded the poisoned lovers. Observers later noted the interplay of affection and obsession in this act. Their passion and mutual dependence drove not only the technical execution, but the psychological intensity of the event. The city's collective anxiety increased, a silent testament to the lovers' expanding influence. Social rituals, casual meetings, and professional engagements all became stages for subtle manipulation. By controlling perception, the couple maintained both social respectability and the secrecy necessary for continued operations. Each step, each observation, and each interaction was a piece of the larger experiment, testing human reactions, refining methods, and solidifying the psychological control that underpinned their lethal endeavors. The victim's final moments were observed indirectly, as the lovers monitored social networks, rumors, and subtle changes in behavior. Every reaction was cataloged, analyzed, and added to their growing database of psychological insight. Their coordination and mutual understanding ensured that no detail was overlooked, producing an outcome that was both meticulously controlled and devastatingly effective. The city itself became part of the climax, its collective fear and uncertainty amplifying the impact of the lovers' actions. Each whisper, each precaution, and each anxious glance reinforced the narrative of omnipotent influence. Observers later described this period as a peak in both psychological and lethal sophistication. The lovers' combination of charm, intellect, and obsession created a uniquely terrifying dynamic. Their passion drove the planning, while their skill ensured flawless execution. Even those closest to the victim remained oblivious, illustrating the effectiveness of subtle manipulation and the precise calibration of fear. Social gatherings, casual encounters, and ordinary transactions became instruments in a complex psychological experiment, demonstrating the reach of the lovers' influence. By the end of this operation, the city was firmly entrenched in a state of anxiety and fascination. The lovers had proven their capability for precision, control, and the seamless blending of love and lethal intent. The meticulous orchestration of events, combined with expert manipulation of social perception, ensured that their legend grew with each passing day. Even authorities, historians, and later scholars would struggle to comprehend the full extent of their operations. The sophistication of planning, execution, and observation created a narrative in which passion, obsession, and methodical calculation were inseparable. The lovers' actions during this climax solidified their reputation as masterful manipulators of both chemistry and human behavior. Their bond, strengthened through shared obsession and mutual reinforcement, allowed them to achieve what few could imagine: a perfect convergence of love, lethal precision, and social influence. Tokyo's collective consciousness was irrevocably altered. Fear, curiosity, and fascination merged to create an enduring aura of unease. The victims, families, and wider social networks were caught in a psychological web, each reaction and interaction further demonstrating the couple's control. The climax of their operations revealed the full scope of their genius, blending meticulous chemical planning with unmatched psychological insight. The poisoned lovers had orchestrated not merely deaths, but a citywide narrative of tension, uncertainty, and obsession. Each act, precisely executed, reinforced both their personal bond and their legend, ensuring that the story of 1922 Tokyo would be forever entwined with fear, fascination, and the deadly romance of the poisoned lovers. Following the execution of their most audacious act, the lovers intensified their observation of both the immediate and extended consequences. Families, colleagues, and social circles reacted with confusion, grief, and fear, all of which were carefully documented by the couple. Each reaction served as data, feeding into their psychological experiment and refining future methods. They monitored hospitals, personal correspondence, and social gatherings, noting patterns of stress, suspicion, and behavioral change. The city of Tokyo, unknowingly enmeshed in their influence, became a living laboratory for the lovers' obsession with control. In the aftermath of each death, subtle manipulations ensured that no suspicion fell upon them. Casual interactions, social etiquette, and charm shielded their identity while reinforcing the perception of respectability. Even the authorities, perplexed by the increasing frequency of mysterious deaths, could not identify patterns connecting the events. The lovers' understanding of human psychology allowed them to anticipate investigative methods, public gossip, and emotional responses, maintaining the advantage in every scenario. Their operations were seamless, each act feeding into a larger narrative of fear and fascination. The precision of execution, combined with deep knowledge of social dynamics, ensured that each victim's death achieved maximum psychological impact. The couple's bond grew stronger with each act, obsession intertwined with devotion, creating a feedback loop in which love and lethality reinforced each other. Even minor acts of attention, subtle gestures, or shared rituals were tied to the orchestration of these lethal plans. The lovers' influence extended beyond direct victims, shaping social perception and behavior citywide. Anxiety, suspicion, and paranoia spread like unseen poison through households, workplaces, and neighborhoods. People adjusted routines, altered communication, and interpreted casual interactions through a lens of fear, unknowingly participating in the couple's experiment. Each interaction, however trivial it seemed, was an opportunity to observe, manipulate, and refine. The lovers' skill in blending affection, charm, and meticulous planning allowed them to operate invisibly, their presence unrecognized even as the effects of their actions rippled outward. By this stage, the couple had perfected a methodology combining chemical, psychological, and social manipulation. Their understanding of dosage, timing, and human physiology was matched only by their knowledge of fear, behavior, and perception. Patterns of illness, subtle stress responses, and social disruption were anticipated and orchestrated to amplify impact. Their most intimate observations were recorded, providing a meticulous account of human response under pressure, fear, and uncertainty. The lovers' precision in planning, execution, and observation set them apart as uniquely dangerous figures. Each operation was a symphony of strategy, timing, and manipulation, They balanced affection and obsession, maintaining a careful equilibrium where passion drove meticulous planning, and planning reinforced devotion. Social gatherings, letters, and public appearances were used as instruments of observation, testing hypotheses about behavior, reaction, and influence. The couple's public persona remained impeccable, blending elegance, charm, and sophistication with lethal intent hidden beneath. The psychological tension created by their actions extended far beyond immediate victims, touching entire communities. Rumors of mysterious deaths and unexplained illnesses fueled anxiety and suspicion, yet no connection to the lovers was evident at the time. This indirect control magnified the impact of their crimes, creating fear in a population unaware of the true source. Scholars later emphasized the integration of social, chemical, and psychological mastery, noting that the lovers' genius lay not only in the mechanics of murder, but in the creation of an entire citywide climate of tension. The interplay of love, obsession, and lethal skill culminated in the precise execution of each act, demonstrating extraordinary foresight and coordination. The couple's obsession with one another ensured perfect synchronization, each action complementing and reinforcing the other. By the conclusion of this period, Tokyo had been irrevocably affected. Social trust eroded, paranoia became commonplace, and the story of the poisoned lovers became legendary in hushed conversations. Their influence was invisible, yet pervasive, demonstrating mastery over both human behavior and chemical lethality. Each subsequent act, carefully planned and executed, reinforced both the lovers' personal bond and the legend surrounding them. The culmination of their efforts revealed a terrifyingly perfect combination of love, intelligence, and lethal intent. The city, its social fabric, and its citizens were caught in a carefully orchestrated psychological web, illustrating the extraordinary power of obsession, intellect, and methodical cruelty. Observers, historians, and authorities would later struggle to understand the full scope of the lovers' influence, recognizing only in retrospect the chilling sophistication of their operations. The climax of their story, marked by precision, passion, and deadly calculation, stands as a testament to the terrifying possibilities of human obsession combined with intellect and malice. The poisoned lovers' orchestration of fear, death, and social disruption solidified their legacy, leaving Tokyo forever haunted by the memory of their lethal romance. In the days following their most audacious acts, the poisoned lovers observed the city with keen eyes, cataloging reactions, rumors, and the spread of fear. Tokyo, already tense from previous unexplained deaths, now simmered with whispered suspicion, subtle paranoia, and anxiety. Families of victims mourned deeply, unaware that grief was just one layer of the psychological impact carefully orchestrated by the lovers. Neighborhoods experienced an invisible shadow. Casual interactions were tinged with suspicion. Social gatherings carried an undercurrent of dread, and ordinary routines were disrupted by fear of unseen danger. The authorities, despite increasing awareness, remained baffled. Investigators struggled to find a pattern linking victims, locations, or causes of death. Each incident appeared isolated, further reinforcing the couple's invincibility. Hospitals and medical professionals documented strange illnesses, yet none could identify a definitive cause. The lovers' meticulous planning had created a scenario in which death, fear, and social disruption were intertwined seamlessly. Observation of public behavior became a new form of entertainment and obsession for the couple. Every whispered conversation, every cautious gesture, and every suspicious glance provided data, feeding into their continuous experiment of human psychology and chemical manipulation. Social circles reacted differently depending on proximity, status, and prior exposure to fear. Wealthy elites, merchants, and government officials exhibited heightened anxiety, altering routines and avoiding potential risks, while lower social classes reacted with superstition, rumor, and fear of divine punishment. The lovers' influence extended far beyond direct victims. They had created a pervasive atmosphere of terror and fascination. Public perception was carefully curated through subtle interventions, occasional appearances, thoughtful gifts, and carefully orchestrated social interactions reinforced their social respectability while concealing lethal intent. The psychological impact on families and communities was profound. Anxiety became a daily companion, and trust eroded in neighborhoods where interactions were once casual. The poisoned lovers' legacy was no longer merely the physical deaths they orchestrated. It was the transformation of social dynamics, perception, and behavior citywide. Authorities attempted to analyze the pattern of deaths and psychological disruption, yet the sophistication of the lovers' methodology rendered detection nearly impossible. Even seasoned investigators were confounded by the lack of direct evidence, the appearance of natural illness, and the perfectly executed timing of each act. The city itself became a living record of their influence. Subtle fear, social tension, and heightened awareness of mortality marked every street, home, and workplace. Families began to internalize the presence of danger, adjusting behavior, avoiding interactions, and second-guessing even ordinary decisions. Psychological manipulation extended beyond immediate circles. Gossip, rumor, and social perception amplified the indirect effects of the lovers' actions. Individuals not directly involved experienced heightened anxiety and suspicion, proving the far-reaching consequences of meticulously executed psychological and chemical influence. The lovers' bond strengthened during this period, fueled by mutual obsession, shared passion, and the satisfaction of controlling both events and perception. Each act of death or manipulation was simultaneously a demonstration of skill, an affirmation of love, and a refinement of methodology. Their understanding of human behavior, social hierarchy, and emotional response allowed them to maximize both psychological and physical impact with minimal effort. Families of victims, authorities, and even casual observers were unwitting participants in a carefully orchestrated experiment. The subtlety of the lovers' methods ensured that their identity remained hidden, while fear and fascination magnified the social and psychological consequences of their actions. Over time, patterns of avoidance, paranoia, and altered behavior emerged citywide. Social networks were disrupted, trust eroded, and suspicion became commonplace. These indirect effects were as significant as the actual deaths, illustrating the scope of the lovers' influence. Each subtle intervention, social gesture, and carefully timed act reinforced the narrative of invisible control. Scholars later emphasized the integration of chemical, psychological, and social mastery in the lovers' methodology. The synergy of passion, obsession, and intelligence created a uniquely lethal dynamic that transformed the city's social landscape. Each family, neighborhood, and social circle unknowingly participated in the expansion of fear and control. Letters, casual interactions, and public appearances became instruments for observation and manipulation, providing constant feedback on human behavior and societal response. Authorities remained powerless. Patterns were nearly invisible, evidence minimal, and timing flawless. The lovers' ability to blend charm, sophistication, and lethal skill ensured uninterrupted operations and continued influence over both direct and indirect victims. Observers later noted the terrifying efficiency of their methods. Fear, grief, and suspicion were harnessed as tools, amplifying the effect of chemical and physical interventions. The psychological impact extended for weeks, months, and years, as social behavior adapted to the constant threat of the unseen. Families learned to alter routines, strangers became suspect, and communal trust fractured, all without direct action from the lovers. Their legacy during this aftermath period was not only measured in fatalities, but also in the subtle, pervasive control exerted over a city's social and psychological environment. Even minor incidents were amplified by public perception, rumor, and anxiety, ensuring the lovers' influence remained active and enduring. Their relationship, bonded by obsession and mutual reinforcement, ensured that no opportunity for observation, manipulation, or experimentation was wasted. Each act, each observation, and each manipulation contributed to an ever-expanding web of control. Communities, families, and entire neighborhoods became living laboratories for the study of fear, perception, and human behavior. The lovers' meticulous record-keeping provided insight into the subtleties of response, social dynamics, and psychological adaptation. Each death, each moment of anxiety, and each disrupted interaction became part of a broader experiment in power, control, and obsession. Tokyo's social fabric was irreversibly altered, leaving a legacy of unease, suspicion, and fascination that would endure long after the direct actions of the poisoned lovers had concluded. The ripple effects of the lovers' actions extended far beyond immediate families and victims, permeating every layer of Tokyo's social hierarchy. Merchants, officials, and ordinary citizens alike adjusted routines in subtle ways, avoiding certain interactions, questioning motives, and silently fearing unseen danger. Public gatherings became subdued, conversations cautious, and social trust eroded. The poisoned lover's reputation, though unofficial and whispered, grew into an invisible force shaping the city's behavior. Scholars, historians, and later observers noted the unique combination of chemical expertise and psychological manipulation, recognizing how meticulously orchestrated fear, could alter entire communities. The lovers themselves continued to monitor these reactions, cataloging subtle changes, emotional responses, and social adjustments with obsessive detail. Their bond strengthened through the meticulous orchestration of both death and observation. Each act of control reinforced passion and precision, creating a cycle where obsession fueled execution, and execution reinforced obsession. Even those who were unaware of the couple's presence felt the indirect influence of their methods, as fear spread like an unseen contagion. Rumors of unexplained deaths, mysterious illnesses, and strange behavior intensified social anxiety. Families questioned routines, friendships were strained, and neighborhoods became laboratories for observation, even without the lovers' direct involvement. The couple's methods had reached a level of sophistication that allowed them to manipulate indirect participants, ensuring that fear, suspicion, and altered behavior extended far beyond immediate victims. Authorities remained frustrated, unable to uncover evidence or patterns linking the events. Each investigation produced isolated conclusions, leaving the lovers free to continue observing the city while maintaining social respectability. Public perception of the couple remained unchallenged. Their charm, elegance, and social grace masked lethal intent while subtly reinforcing their omnipresence. Observers noted that this indirect control created a psychological web in which fear spread more efficiently than physical intervention. The lovers' ability to blend affection, obsession, and lethal precision allowed them to operate with minimal risk while maximizing influence. Families of victims continued to grieve, unaware that their emotional responses were part of a broader, calculated effect. Social networks, conversations, and minor interactions all became part of an ongoing experiment in human behavior and societal response. Letters, casual remarks, and subtle gestures amplified indirect influence, producing anxiety, suspicion, and mistrust throughout the city. The lovers' obsessive record-keeping ensured that no detail, however minor, was overlooked. Patterns of behavior, emotional shifts, and social adjustments were meticulously documented, contributing to a growing understanding of human reaction under pressure and fear. Their mastery of perception, charm, and chemical manipulation allowed them to observe and control indirectly, producing consequences that were both immediate and long-term. The city, unknowingly trapped in this web, adapted to fear as a new constant. Families became cautious, neighborhoods became tense, and social interactions carried hidden stress, demonstrating the pervasive reach of the poisoned lover's influence. Even without direct acts of poisoning, the psychological effect was profound, illustrating the couple's mastery over perception, behavior, and social dynamics. Their obsession with one another reinforced coordination, ensuring that every observation, interaction, and indirect influence was maximized. Tokyo's citizens, oblivious to the source, reacted predictably to invisible pressure, proving the effectiveness of the lovers' methodologies. Scholars later emphasized the terrifying ingenuity of this combination. Chemical precision, psychological manipulation, and social orchestration blended to produce a nearly invisible yet powerful control over life and behavior. Families, social circles, and professional networks were subtly transformed. Patterns of anxiety, avoidance, and mistrust became routine, a living testament to the reach of the lovers' influence. The couple continued to observe, analyze, and refine methods, ensuring that even indirect interactions were recorded and studied. Each death, each ripple of fear, each subtle social adjustment was a demonstration of lethal precision and obsessive care. Their bond, reinforced by collaboration, obsession, and shared secrecy, allowed them to expand operations while maintaining impeccable appearances. Even as decades passed, the psychological footprint of the lovers' actions persisted. Communities, families, and social networks retained traces of fear, caution, and mistrust, illustrating the enduring impact of the poisoned lovers' orchestration. Letters, casual social gestures, and indirect communication served as both observation tools and instruments of subtle manipulation. Tokyo remained an unwitting participant in a living experiment, where behavior, emotion, and perception were continuously observed and influenced. By the end of this period, the poisoned lovers had created a legacy not merely of death, but of pervasive psychological control, social disruption, and lasting fascination. Their combination of passion, intellect, and methodical cruelty produced a haunting narrative that would resonate through history. The aftermath of their actions, both direct and indirect, left Tokyo transformed. Trust eroded, social interaction altered, and fear became an invisible companion in daily life. The lovers' expertise in human behavior and chemistry, coupled with obsessive coordination, ensured the permanence of their influence. Communities, families, and institutions unknowingly participated in a meticulously designed experiment, demonstrating the terrifying power of love and obsession combined with lethal precision. The poisoned lover's control, though invisible, was absolute in shaping perception, social norms, and emotional response. Tokyo's social and psychological fabric was forever changed, leaving a legacy of fear, fascination, and the haunting legend of the poisoned lovers. Despite the lovers' reign of fear and calculated manipulation, questions lingered that no one could answer. The true scope of their operations remained shrouded in secrecy, even as investigators, historians, and ordinary citizens tried to piece together fragmented evidence. Each death, each unexplained illness, each subtle shift in social behavior contributed to a growing enigma. How had two people wielded such precise control over a city's social and psychological environment? The poisons were scientifically advanced, yet undetectable, leaving no direct proof of their methods. Hospitals documented symptoms that appeared natural, confounding doctors and chemists alike. Victims' families struggled to understand the sudden loss, searching desperately for explanations where none could be found. Rumors and whispered stories proliferated, blending fact with speculation, further mystifying the events. The lovers' social charm and respectability masked lethal intent, leaving observers unable to reconcile their elegance with the trail of death they left behind. Attempts at investigation frequently failed. Patterns were hidden beneath layers of sophistication, timing, and psychological manipulation. Even seasoned detectives were unable to identify connections among victims, locations, or timing. Every interaction the lovers had with the public was carefully curated, leaving no trace yet maximizing influence. Letters, gestures, and social presence became instruments of subtle observation and indirect control. The true extent of their psychological experimentation was unknowable, hidden behind the masks of charm, passion, and obsession. Each act of murder was both meticulously executed and enshrouded in ambiguity, creating a legacy of unanswered questions and unsolved mysteries. Citizens speculated, historians analyzed, and investigators theorized. But the lovers' cunning ensured that the final truth remained elusive. Families mourned in silence, with suspicion often falling on natural causes or coincidence rather than the true source. The city became a landscape of invisible fear, where the unseen influence of the lovers shaped behavior and social norms. Scholars later examined how psychological manipulation, social observation, and chemical expertise combined to create phenomena that appeared inexplicable at the time. Rumors of ghostly presences, curses, or supernatural influence circulated, feeding public fascination and anxiety. The poisoned lovers' genius lay not only in their lethal precision, but also in their ability to remain undetectable, cultivating a mythos that outlived immediate events. Even decades later, Tokyo remained haunted by whispers of the invisible power that had once gripped it. Patterns of behavior, subtle social adjustments, and heightened anxiety were all evidence of influence that defied traditional explanation. Attempts to recreate, understand, or replicate the events failed, leaving science, law enforcement, and social observers frustrated. The lovers' methods seemed to transcend ordinary comprehension. Chemistry, psychology, and social manipulation converged seamlessly to produce results that appeared supernatural in their efficiency. Each unanswered question added to the aura surrounding the poisoned lovers. How had they predicted social reactions so precisely? How had they concealed chemical evidence so thoroughly? How had they remained socially untouchable while orchestrating a series of deaths? These questions were unanswerable at the time, and the lack of evidence only magnified the mystery. Observers later speculated that their bond, passion, and obsession were central to their success. Mutual trust and coordination allowed the lovers to synchronize operations flawlessly, making detection nearly impossible. Even minor errors were avoided, each act planned and executed to perfection. Historians noted that while the deaths were the most visible outcome, the indirect influence on behavior, perception, and social structure was equally significant. Tokyo's social fabric had been altered invisibly, leaving lingering fear, suspicion, and fascination. Individuals who had interacted with the lovers reported subtle psychological effects that persisted long after direct contact ended. Families and neighbors remained cautious. Social routines were altered, and whispers of danger influenced daily life. The poisoned lover's legacy was thus twofold: physical deaths and a pervasive psychological impact that reshaped social interaction citywide. Attempts to understand their methods through forensic or chemical means proved futile, leaving only the narrative of fear, obsession, and precision. Rumors, legends, and stories of invisible control proliferated, feeding collective imagination and maintaining the lovers' mystique. Scholars emphasize that the combination of chemistry, psychology, and social orchestration was unprecedented, creating outcomes that defied conventional analysis. Each subtle manipulation, each indirect influence, and each calculated death contributed to a network of unsolved mysteries. The poisoned lover's actions illustrated how human behavior, perception, and social structures could be manipulated invisibly, leaving long-lasting psychological consequences. Even today, the story continues to fascinate, demonstrating the enduring power of obsession, intelligence, and meticulous planning. Tokyo's population had experienced a social and psychological transformation, the causes of which remained largely unknown. Investigators' inability to explain the deaths, the timing, or the pattern of influence only amplified the legendary aura of the lovers. Every unanswered question, every unexplained symptom, every whispered rumor added layers to the enigmatic legacy they left behind. The poisoned lovers had achieved a rare and terrifying mastery: total control without detection, influence without evidence, and psychological transformation without physical presence. The city's residents, families of victims, and social observers remained bound by the invisible threads the lovers had woven. Their reputation, both terrifying and fascinating, became a cautionary tale, a subject of scholarly analysis, and a haunting memory for generations. In the end, the poisoned lovers' true methods, intentions, and full capabilities remained a mystery, cementing their place in history as figures both legendary and unknowable, whose actions combined passion, obsession, and lethal precision in ways that defied comprehension. As Tokyo struggled to comprehend the events surrounding the poisoned lovers, unanswered questions deepened, creating an aura of fear and fascination that persisted across decades. Social networks, public interactions, and familial routines had been irrevocably altered, leaving an invisible mark of psychological control. Scholars and investigators attempted to reconstruct the timeline of deaths, illnesses, and behavioral changes, but the precision, timing, and subtlety of the lovers' actions rendered patterns almost imperceptible. Each act of poisoning, each orchestrated reaction, and each manipulated social interaction was part of a broader experiment, demonstrating the lovers' meticulous planning and unparalleled understanding of human behavior. Even decades later, medical professionals found themselves bewildered by historical records, unable to determine the specific chemical compounds or mechanisms used to cause death without leaving traceable evidence. Families continued to whisper rumors and stories, often blending factual events with speculation, creating a folklore that enhanced both fear and fascination. Public perception evolved into myth, where the lovers' actions were attributed to curses, supernatural power, or other inexplicable forces. The combination of elegance, charm, and lethal precision made them appear untouchable, and few dared to question or confront their influence. Cities often experience isolated incidents of social disruption, but the poisoned lovers' impact was unprecedented. Entire social networks and communities had been altered without direct confrontation. Their genius lay in blending science, psychology, and social manipulation into a seamless, undetectable strategy. Observers noted that fear spread faster than disease, anxiety faster than grief, creating an invisible network of control extending far beyond direct victims. Historians speculated that the lovers' personal obsession fueled not only their lethal efficiency, but also the meticulous recording of social responses. Letters, gestures, and casual encounters were documented, analyzed, and refined into predictive models of human behavior, a form of experimentation without consent. Authorities, despite mounting evidence of repeated patterns, were unable to pinpoint culprits. Hospitals reported unusual symptoms, doctors were confounded, and chemists could not identify traceable agents. This scientific opacity amplified fear, leading to suspicion, rumor, and social tension that persisted for years. The poisoned lovers had not only killed, but had created an enduring psychological footprint. Patterns of avoidance, suspicion, and altered interaction became ingrained within social norms, demonstrating that influence could extend far beyond immediate actions. Scholars later emphasized the uniqueness of their approach. Social engineering, chemical mastery, and obsessive observation combined to produce outcomes that were both lethal and invisible. Families, acquaintances, and even distant communities unknowingly participated in the lovers' ongoing experiment, their behaviors manipulated through subtle intervention and indirect observation. Letters, conversations, and social etiquette were employed strategically to maintain control, influence perception, and maximize fear. Each unexplained death reinforced the mythos, perpetuating psychological terror and fascination simultaneously. The lovers' obsessive coordination ensured that timing, dosage, and social context were perfectly aligned, leaving investigators helpless and witnesses uncertain. The balance of charm and menace created a complex duality. Their public persona remained impeccable, while their private operations demonstrated extraordinary cunning. The city itself became a laboratory for testing human behavior under pressure, fear, and uncertainty. Families adjusted routines, communities adapted to invisible threats, and social networks transformed in response to perceived danger. These indirect effects proved as impactful as the physical poison, demonstrating the psychological sophistication of the lovers' methodology. Even historians centuries later struggled to untangle fact from myth, with legends of invisible influence, supernatural control, and precise calculation blending into narrative. The poisoned lover's work exemplified extreme mastery of multiple disciplines: chemistry, human psychology, social dynamics, and observational skill. Each death, each ripple of fear, and each subtle alteration of behavior contributed to a broader, enduring legacy. Public fascination persisted alongside fear, creating an aura that reinforced both their notoriety and the mystery surrounding their true capabilities. Attempts to replicate, study, or fully understand the events failed, as the combination of passion, intellect, and obsessive precision proved unique and inimitable. Communities unknowingly continued to adjust behavior, perpetuating the invisible influence the lovers had established. Social norms, routines, and interactions became subtly reshaped by the residual psychological footprint, illustrating the enduring nature of their manipulation. Even today, the story of the poisoned lovers is remembered not just for the deaths they caused, but for the pervasive, invisible influence they exerted over an entire city. Rumors, myth, and folklore ensured that their legend transcended factual history, becoming an enduring example of how obsession, intelligence, and lethal intent can reshape human behavior. The poisoned lover's story serves as a chilling reminder that control, fear, and manipulation can extend far beyond direct action, leaving social and psychological consequences that persist long after the initial events. In the end, Tokyo remained haunted not only by the memory of the deaths, but also by the invisible threads of influence, fear, and fascination the lovers had meticulously woven. Their actions, though historical, remain a testament to the terrifying potential of obsession, calculated planning, and mastery over both human behavior and lethal science. The city and its citizens became a living record of this unseen power, demonstrating that the poisoned lover's legacy was as much psychological as it was physical. The tale of the poisoned lovers reached its inevitable conclusion, not in a dramatic confrontation, but in the slow, haunting legacy they left behind. Tokyo's streets remained shadowed with whispers of fear and fascination, the invisible influence of the lovers lingering long after their direct actions ceased. Families, still mourning lost members, spoke in hushed tones about unexplainable deaths, subtle illness, and the pervasive anxiety that had altered daily routines. The city itself bore scars of psychological manipulation, its social fabric reshaped through fear, rumor, and suspicion. Scholars and historians debated endlessly about the extent of the lovers' operations, attempting to quantify the blend of chemistry, psychology, and social influence that had enabled such precise control. Even with hindsight, the sophistication of their methods baffled experts, leaving the true scope shrouded in mystery. The lovers themselves remained enigmas, figures of obsession, passion, and lethal intellect whose personal bond had enabled unprecedented coordination. Their deaths, if they occurred at all, were unrecorded, leaving legends that blurred fact and fiction. Stories circulated of fleeting appearances, whispered observations, and the near supernatural precision with which they had orchestrated terror. The city's collective memory became a repository for fear, fascination, and speculation, ensuring that the poisoned lover's influence endured. In households across Tokyo, the subtle lessons of vigilance, suspicion, and anxiety passed down silently through generations, evidence of the enduring psychological footprint left by the lovers. Even those unaware of the history felt echoes of unease, as social norms had been irrevocably altered. Casual interactions carried tension, public gatherings a faint undertone of paranoia, and communities approached relationships with cautious awareness. Historians emphasized that the combination of meticulous chemical planning, obsessive coordination, and profound psychological insight created an impact that was both lethal and enduring. Every minor observation, every subtle social manipulation, and every calculated death contributed to a network of influence that persisted beyond the immediate victims. The poisoned lover's legacy, therefore, was not solely the tally of lives claimed but the pervasive transformation of social and psychological landscapes. Scholars noted that the invisibility of their operations magnified the effect, as fear spread through rumor, observation, and subtle adjustment of behavior. Attempts to reconstruct the events produced fragmented narratives, each contributing to the mythos, further enhancing fascination while leaving critical details obscured. Families and witnesses, unable to comprehend the full scope, often interpreted events through superstition, rumor, or exaggerated anecdote. This blend of partial knowledge and speculation ensured that the story endured as a cautionary tale, a haunting example of human obsession intertwined with lethal skill. The lovers' bond, simultaneously passionate and obsessive, had fueled their operations, allowing unprecedented precision and coordination. Each act of murder, each subtle intervention, and each manipulation of social perception reinforced not only the immediate effects but the enduring psychological legacy. Authorities, even with access to records and reports, remained unable to fully explain the events. Evidence was circumstantial, timing impeccable, and patterns hidden within layers of social and psychological manipulation. The perfection of the lovers' orchestration created a narrative in which explanation was almost impossible, leaving Tokyo perpetually shadowed by uncertainty. Communities, aware of whispered rumors but unaware of the precise actors, developed social rituals of caution, subtle avoidance, and heightened suspicion. The legacy extended beyond direct human victims. It shaped cultural memory, social norms, and collective behavior, ensuring that the impact of the poisoned lovers would echo for generations. Each legend, story, and account, even when partially accurate, contributed to a psychological architecture of fear, fascination, and awe. Scholars emphasize the enduring combination of passion, intellect, and methodical cruelty that defined the lovers' operations. Their psychological mastery ensured that fear was as potent and pervasive as the chemical agents they wielded, transforming ordinary citizens into unwitting participants in a living experiment. The meticulous attention to detail, coordination, and timing had produced results that were invisible yet far-reaching, blending lethal precision with social influence. The city itself became a testament to the lovers' genius, with altered routines, cautious interactions, and pervasive anxiety forming a silent monument to their control. Families, neighbors, and social networks experienced subtle shifts that persisted for decades, echoing the psychological patterns established during the height of the lovers' activities. Even without direct observation, the effects of their actions were measurable through social behavior, rumor, and adaptation. The poisoned lovers had created a narrative that blurred boundaries between myth, fact, and psychological reality. Their story, transmitted through whispers, scholarly analysis, and social memory, ensured that the terror and fascination they inspired would never fade. The precision, obsession, and coordination that had defined their lives became legend, a testament to the terrifying power of intelligence, passion, and lethal intent intertwined. Tokyo remained haunted, not only by the literal deaths that occurred but by the invisible threads of control and influence, meticulously woven by the poisoned lovers. Their legacy, simultaneously factual and legendary, stands as a chilling reminder that human obsession, when combined with intellect and methodical precision, can shape not only lives but entire communities, social structures, and collective memory. As the final chapters of the poisoned lover's story unfolded, Tokyo remained shadowed by the memory of fear, obsession, and invisible influence. Communities continued to function under subtle pressure, social routines adapted to invisible threats, and public gatherings carried a lingering tension that traced back to the lovers' manipulations. Families, long aware of the unexplained deaths, whispered stories and legends that blurred the line between fact and myth. Historians noted that the perfection of timing, chemical precision, and psychological orchestration had left an imprint far beyond immediate victims. The lovers' expertise in understanding human behavior, social dynamics, and emotional response ensured that the consequences of their actions would be measured not only in fatalities, but in altered perception and ongoing anxiety. Even as time passed, subtle social rituals reflected the enduring impact of their operations. People avoided unnecessary interactions, approached casual conversations with caution, and internalized a collective sense of vigilance. These behavioral adaptations, born from fear and uncertainty, became part of Tokyo's social fabric, demonstrating the long-lasting psychological footprint left by the poisoned lovers. Scholars emphasized that while their physical actions ended, the invisible influence persisted, creating patterns of mistrust, suspicion, and careful observation that spanned generations. Attempts to trace their methods, reconstruct events, or identify chemical agents proved inconclusive, leaving the lovers' true mastery largely unknowable. Communities adapted, legends spread, and the psychological climate continued to reflect the sophistication of their strategies. Every death, every manipulation, and every subtle intervention contributed to a layered narrative of obsession, intelligence, and lethal skill. The lovers' bond, rooted in mutual fascination and obsessive coordination, had enabled unprecedented control over human behavior and perception. Their precision and meticulous planning created a dynamic in which fear was propagated without direct confrontation. Influence extended invisibly, and social structures were reshaped in subtle yet measurable ways. Even the absence of direct evidence amplified the legend, leaving future generations with tales of unseen power, mysterious deaths, and the terrifying possibility of control exercised without detection. Historians and scholars debated endlessly about the ethical, psychological, and scientific aspects of the lovers' operations, yet definitive answers remained elusive. The intricate combination of passion, lethal expertise, and psychological insight ensured that their story could not be fully understood, only observed and interpreted. Tokyo itself became a testament to the invisible legacy of the poisoned lovers, with behaviors, perceptions, and social interactions reflecting the enduring impact of unseen influence. Families adjusted routines subconsciously, communities adopted cautionary measures, and entire social networks evolved under the residual psychological weight of fear. Scholars emphasized that this invisible transformation was as significant as any physical outcome, demonstrating the terrifying reach of precise manipulation and obsessive coordination. The lovers' story became a cultural and historical reference point, illustrating how intelligence, obsession, and methodical planning can extend influence far beyond direct actions. Their impact was both immediate and enduring, tangible in altered behavior, and intangible in the pervasive atmosphere of suspicion and fascination. Legends of the lovers persisted alongside factual accounts, creating a dual narrative of myth and reality that haunted Tokyo's collective memory. Every rumor, anecdote, and whispered story reinforced the psychological control they had once exerted. The lovers' genius lay not only in lethal precision, but in the creation of a social and psychological environment entirely shaped by their influence. Authorities, historians, and citizens alike were unable to fully discern the extent or methodology of their operations, leaving the narrative perpetually enigmatic. The city's response, caution, anxiety, subtle behavioral adaptations, became a living record of the lovers' mastery over human perception and social dynamics. Even without direct interaction, individuals adjusted behavior, interpreted gestures with suspicion, and internalized lessons from unseen forces, demonstrating the far-reaching consequences of subtle influence. The poisoned lovers' legacy persisted in the collective consciousness, a reminder of the terrifying potential of obsession, intellect, and meticulous planning. Tokyo's streets, families, and social networks remained shadowed by the imprint of their actions, evidence that control, fear, and influence could extend beyond tangible events into the very fabric of everyday life. Each story, observation, and legend reinforced the notion that the lovers' coordination, precision, and passion had created an enduring psychological landscape. The city became a monument to invisible mastery, a place where human behavior, social perception, and emotional response had been irrevocably altered. Future generations inherited a world subtly shaped by the poisoned lovers' actions, learning caution, vigilance, and the enduring power of fear even in the absence of direct evidence. Their story serves as a chilling testament to the fusion of love, obsession, intelligence, and lethal skill, demonstrating that influence, once exerted, can outlast life itself. The poisoned lovers saga concluded not with a dramatic confrontation, but through the subtle, enduring imprint of their actions on individuals, families, and communities, leaving Tokyo forever haunted by their presence, remembered through whispers, legends, and the invisible threads of psychological and social transformation they meticulously wove.